Good evening, I'm Glenda Chong, and tonight's top stories. Making clear what they can offer if elected as president. The three men vying to be the next head of state lay out their vision and highlight what sets them apart from one another in the second and final presidential candidate broadcast. The three candidates also hit the grounds for one last time, making their final appeal to voters as they wrap up 9 days of campaigning. And also tonight, the centre leader and operator of a Kinderland preschool branch under investigation over the alleged child abuse cases. A second teacher has been arrested. The race to be Singapore's next president heats up just before cooling off day kicks in tomorrow. The day after, the country will go to the polls. On the show tonight, we'll bring you some of the key messages from the hopefuls on the final day of campaigning. And these include building on family values, stronger and deeper solidarity, as well as bringing all under one unified Singapore society. But first, the three candidates and their presidential candidate broadcast messages. Presidential candidate Tan Kin Lian says if elected, he will continue to uphold important family values. He also aims to use a soft influence and the prestige of the president's office to make life better for Singaporeans. Mr. Tan also pledged to work together with the government. In a presidential candidate broadcast message, Mr. Tan also apologized for comments he previously made on social media.
75-year-old Tan Kin Lian says the president must put the needs of the country and its people first. Besides safeguarding the country's reserves and upholding the integrity of the public service, he says the role required an understanding of the people's needs. Mr. Tan believes he has the necessary experience and knowledge to manage Singapore's reserves, citing his 30-year tenure as the Chief Executive Officer of NTUC Income. He adds that a president must not be afraid to exercise independent thinking or stand for what is right.
Throughout my life, I have had to stand alone through many difficult times. When many investors lost their savings by investing in bad financial products in the past, I was not afraid to stand up on their behalf, to ask questions. It takes courage, tenacity, and resilience to ask these difficult questions.
Mr. Tan says his humble upbringing gave him a deep appreciation of the difficulties people go through, and he keeps to a simple lifestyle.
I am grateful for a loving wife, 3 adult children, and 5 adorable grandchildren. It is wonderful to have a family where the members take care of each other over the years. I will continue to uphold important family values as this is the cornerstone of any society.
Mr. Tan also apologized to those who were offended by his previous social media posts.
As an active and outgoing person, I like to share about my daily activities and observations of everyday life. I have never meant any disrespect to the people I encounter. To all those who have found any of what I have said or done in the past upsetting or inappropriate, I would like to sincerely apologize for it. I will be more mindful of what I say in the future.
He also spoke about the encounters during his walkabouts. Many members of the public shared with him their difficulties caused by the recent rise in the cost of living.
I will act independently of the government and do my best to convey the views of the people to the government and help the government to find out ways to make life better for the people. I am aware that the President does not have the executive authority on these matters. However, I believe it is possible to achieve these goals by using the soft influence and prestige of the President's office. I hope to work in collaboration with the government to achieve our common goals for the benefit of Singapore.
In closing, Mr. Tan says he wants to champion the well-being of Singaporeans to make life better for everyone.
A strong bond with the ground and a track record of connecting with people from all walks of life. That's one of 3 key traits that presidential candidate Tharman Shanmugaratnam says makes him stand out from other candidates this election. In his second presidential candidate broadcast message today, he also highlights his international standing and understanding of how to safeguard the country's reserves. Wisha Matthew reports.
A familiar face to all, former Senior Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam says his goal, if elected as president, is to build a future of stability and deeper solidarity among Singaporeans. To do that, the 66-year-old says he brings to the table 3 key traits, what he terms as unique from his opponents. First, his international standing.
I will bring to the presidency my international standing. I am the first Asian to have chaired the International Monetary Fund's key policy advisory committee. I have led high-level councils of the United Nations, the G20, and other global bodies on a wide range of areas: international economic, financial, human development, environmental, and pandemic challenges in recent years. I have also built up strong relations with senior figures among our partners in Asia, the West, and the developing world.
And when it comes to the duties and responsibilities of the president, Mr. Tharman says he has the breadth of understanding that is unmatched by the other candidates. Be it safeguarding Singapore's reserves or ensuring the integrity of the public service, his experience in the government has helped him understand the system inside out.
The president's most fundamental role when holding the second key to the reserves is quite different. It is to ensure that the spending policies of the government and various other public agencies do not lead to the nation's reserves being misused. This concerns the Ministry of Finance and Government rather than the GIC.
But what is a president without his people? And for the former Member of Parliament of Jurong GRC, connecting with people has always been close to his heart.
I come with a record of connecting with people from all backgrounds in Jurong. That speaks for itself. I have also spent many years supporting NGOs nationally. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected president, I will be active in mobilizing support for ground-up initiatives to uplift every group with a disadvantage, those facing challenges in mental well-being, and everyone who needs a second or a third chance. I will encourage and foster deeper interactions between our different faiths and cultures so as to deepen our multicultural identity. And I will continue to bridge the diverse views that are natural in our democracy. There is always common ground to be found.
Summing up his speech, he says Singapore's most precious asset is its unity and solidarity among its people.
We must deepen that solidarity in the years to come. It requires deepening respect for all, regardless of backgrounds or educational achievements. Respect for all. It is at the heart of our future as Singaporeans, and why our brightest years are ahead of us.
He calls for Singaporeans to support him and his dream of building a more inclusive and fair society for all.
Presidential candidate Ng Kok Song says it's an urgent matter to have a non-partisan president who is not beholden to political parties. The former GIC Chief Investment Officer again presented himself as the only candidate in the election who has never belonged to any party. Geraldine Yap with more.
Non-partisanship is a theme that has featured strongly in Mr. Ng Kok Song's campaign. He says all the elected presidents since 1993 have been affiliated to or endorsed by the People's Action Party. And in this election, one candidate has opposition figures in his campaign, while the other resigned from government a month ago.
Can we take the risk of having another government-endorsed president checking government requests to draw down our reserves? Is it appropriate for an ex-finance minister who set fiscal policies to then move across the table and become the president and check on the very policies that he had put in place? I do not believe any person should be put in such a position of conflict. And we don't need to.
Mr. Ng says this also goes against the spirit of the Constitution, which requires candidates to not belong to any political party.
Our system has complied with the letter, but not the spirit of the Constitution. Our system allowed past political leaders to stand for election merely months after resigning from their political party. We are now in 2023. This is not 1993. I strongly believe that the time has come in this presidential election to uphold the spirit of the Constitution.
As Singapore makes the transition to a new leadership team, Mr. Ng says the risks will increase and there will be more reasons and crises to draw heavily on the reserves.
Politics in Singapore today has become highly contestable. Having the wrong team in charge in the near future is no longer a remote possibility. Our government leadership will also undergo a generational change in the next few years. There are uncertainties and risks with all transitions. The recent controversies discussed in Parliament imply that we cannot take for granted the exceptionally high standards of incorruptibility and integrity of good government. In the face of such increasing risks, we cannot afford to have a president who may be beholden to political parties who endorse their nominations and help get them elected.
Mr. Ng says he's offering himself as a change, a president who is not connected to any party.
It is time we break from the past of having a president endorsed by the PAP. The elected presidency is an office that must belong to all Singaporeans, not to any privileged group, organization, or party.
And you can catch the second presidential candidate broadcast in full right after the news at 9:30 p.m. here on Channel 5. And still ahead on News Tonight, presidential candidate Tharman Shanmugaratnam dismisses claims about his son's employment and the connection to his presidential bid.
So there's no conflict of interest. It's a simple matter. This is an utterly straightforward issue. There are some stray bullets.
Plus the do's and don'ts for the next 2 days, and that includes paying attention to what you wear. Tell you why after the break.
My Mitsubishi Electric StarMax aircon saves me energy and money. It's easy to clean and is so quiet. Weather report brought to you by Mitsubishi Electric.
Singapore.
More now on our coverage of the presidential election. Mr. Ng Kok Song says he had taken extra precautions during the last day of campaigning. This comes after he was subjected to verbal abuse by a man on a bicycle at Clementi last night.
I'm getting my campaign team to have more people who can be in charge of security, So I've been very well protected by some of my security personnel. And I'm also concerned that they should also stand where the public are to protect the public against any intrusion.
Mr. Ng was speaking to the media during his visit to Hougang Hainanese Food Village. He said this place was chosen as it was where he grew up. He also visited a monastery where he exchanged views about his vision of a unified Singapore society is like. And if elected, he hopes to bring together people from different religions, share the fruits of economic success with the less privileged, and for people to live in harmony.
Foreigners are welcome, and they should be welcome. But it's very important that citizens must come first. Because only when the citizens come first can the united society we want to see be sustained.
Mr. Ng ended his campaign in the evening at Kopitiam Square in Sengkang. He expressed how he had no regrets during the campaign period and is happy having done his best. Mr. Tan Kin Yen said in his presidential candidate broadcast message that he wants to uphold family values as is the cornerstone of any society. It's a similar message while he was out campaigning during the day. He encourages young people to marry early if they can afford to do so, acknowledging the challenges with the cost of living and job security. These are key concerns he will address if he's elected.
I want to promote family value also because I'm told that members of the Christian and the Muslim community are also concerned that family values have been eroded in recent years. So this is quite important to emphasize, and I want to emphasize them on their behalf.
Mr. Tan was speaking to the media at Hougang MRT. He says he's confident about his chances as he gotten feedback that he did well on CNA's presidential forum on Monday. He also explains that he has had to cancel holding an online rally scheduled for today, citing what he calls a conflict of priorities. That includes getting approval for his counting agents and getting his posters ready. Mr. Tan also reiterated his apology to those offended by his earlier posts on social media, despite standing by the comments initially.
I'm advised that it's better to apologize rather than to point out that this is a small group, so I take that advice.
Mr. Tharman Shanmugaratnam, meanwhile, says he hopes that this year's presidential election will be remembered by voters as one that was contested and having a multi-racial slate. He adds that Singapore is rising above race progressively year by year.
I'd like it to be remembered as a contest where people actually do look at individual track records and life histories. Even though there's a lot of political noise, I think Singaporeans are quite calm and sensible about it.
Mr. Tharman was speaking to the media on the sidelines of a dialogue session with athletes on the final day of campaigning. He ended the day's walkabout by visiting residents and hawkers at Marine Parade Central Market and Food Centre in the evening. Mr. Tharman also addressed claims against his children. He says they are false and baseless and are bringing disrepute to the election contest. There were online chatter over his son's employment in the Finance Ministry as well as his children's education history. The Finance Ministry refuted claims that there is conflict of interest between Mr. Tharman's presidency bid and his son's role in the ministry. The ministry said Mr. Akilan Shanmugaratnam formerly served in the Reserves and Investment Directorate, but he was rotated to work on manpower and education policies since July. It said the move was to preempt any possible potential for conflict of interest situations in the presidential election. Responding to the matter, Mr. Tharman says there's nothing for him to answer.
So there's no conflict of interest. It's a simple matter. This is an utterly straightforward issue. There are some stray bullets. MOF and PSD, fortunately, I just saw it while I was in the dialogue with the sportspersons, have clarified it, and that's all there is to it. It's a non-story. It's a complete non-story, that's all.
Other claims circulating on social media include Mr. Tharman's children receiving government support for a business and being educated in international schools. In a statement, his spokesperson refuted these claims, saying none of Mr. Tharman's 4 children are in business and they attended local schools. No campaigning activity and election advertising is allowed starting midnight as cooling-off day for the presidential polls begins. This includes reposting existing online campaign material, holding public meetings, or showing any of the candidates' symbols. This lasts until the close of polling day, and that's on Friday at 8 p.m. The Elections Department says this is to give voters time to reflect on their choice. Walkabouts and home visits are also prohibited. On polling day, voters should also avoid wearing clothes or carry items that could be seen as influencing others to support a particular candidate. Candidates and their supporters are also reminded that the publication of election surveys and exit polls are not allowed before the close of polling. Now, in other news, a correction order has been issued to Reform Party leader Kenneth Jeyaretnam. It relates to false statements he posted online on various platforms, including Facebook, X and LinkedIn. This is the 4th time in over a month that he's been issued the correction order. Among the false claims include comments saying the government doesn't expect to fully disperse money which were set aside for various financial packages. These include the Majulah and the Merdeka Generation package disbursements. He also made untrue statements on Singapore's manpower statistics. He wrongly claimed that a full-time student is considered being employed. Mr. Jeyaretnam also falsely stated that the government deliberately does not take action against money laundering and foreign tax evasion. This, he says, allowed huge inflows of dirty money into Singapore. Mr. Jeyaretnam is required to put up correction notices on his articles. It must also include a link to the government's clarification. Preschool operator Kinderland is under investigation by the Early Childhood Development Agency. It is doing this to find out its role in the case of alleged abuse by a teacher in one of its branches at Woodlands. The leader in charge of the branch is also being investigated. These developments come as a second teacher in another Kinderland branch in Choa Chu Kang has been arrested for child mismanagement. The agency did not provide further details on the second case. In a statement, it added that it is closely monitoring the preschool at Woodlands. Among other measures, the agency says it could issue warning letters to educators who flout child management practices and refer them to the police. For preschool operators, financial penalties could be imposed and their licenses revoked. Kinderland revealed that 6 parents had withdrawn their children from the 2 centres. In a statement, it also said that it had apologized to the parents and that safety measures would be enhanced. It says closed-circuit televisions would now be installed in all classrooms at the 2 branches. Previously, they were placed only in common areas. It is also opening a new contact point for parents. Teachers would also have a better way to highlight any issues they face directly to its headquarters. And that's news tonight. We leave you with a look back at some of the highlights of the presidential campaign. Have a good evening.
This program is available on demand for free.